Alright guys, so Irish politicians continue to simultaneously amaze and also depress me. Amaze in the sense that this is a kind of rhetoric that's coming out of a European country, and simultaneously depressed in the sense that we have absolutely nothing remotely close to this kind of stuff here in the United States. So here we have a Thomas Gould over in Ireland who is going to go absolutely ballistic on Israel in their genocidal war in Gaza, and specifically on Benjamin Netanyahu. So let's go ahead and jump into this video, and then I got some more updates for you guys on this nebulous ceasefire proposal that Biden claimed was Israel's and then Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't like, etc., etc. So let's watch this Thomas Gould clip here.
Photographs and the pictures and the videos that come from there, and you hear the screams of people screaming as the Israeli government burned men, women and children alive. They burned them alive. And the world stands by while 15,000 children are being slaughtered, 35,000 men and women and children. And it's unbelievable, the genocide that's happening. A child with no head, a child with no head, and the Israeli government say it's a mistake, a mistake. I hope that Benjamin Netanyahu burns in hell the same way them children and their families burned. I hope him and his generals and the far-right government in Israel, that when their God finally brings him to the resting place, that he deserves to burn in hell. Because what is happening now, not alone is it apartheid, not alone is it atrocity and a war crime, it's just horrific. It's just horrific what they're doing. Where is their soul? Where is the soul of the Israeli people that allows their government to do this to children? Where is their humanity? The Israeli people, the Jewish people, after everything the Jewish people have suffered down over the decades, that they would allow their government to do this to other human beings. Human beings. But in the eyes of Netanyahu and this far-right Israeli government, Palestinians are human beings. But today here, the Irish people say, we recognize Palestine. We recognize that they are human beings, just like every one of us. Shame on Israel. Shame on what they've done, and will never be forgotten.
I mean, you can really feel the emotion and the passion in that guy's voice, and it's all entirely justified. I mean, there's nothing that he laid out there that I don't fully 100% agree with. You know, in terms of the state of Ireland recognizing a Palestinian state, we now have an addition to that. Just recently, Slovenia became the latest European country to recognize a Palestinian state after a parliamentary vote, and this came just a couple of weeks ago after Ireland and Norway and Spain all recognized a Palestinian state. And it's also important to remind you guys, like, a vast majority of the world already recognizes a Palestinian state. They have for a very long time. It's really just the United States, some of our Western European allies, and then, you know, literally less than a handful of a scattering of other countries around the world. The vast majority of the world is on the side of the Palestinians when it comes to statehood. Now, the United States, you know, pretends like we're in favor of a two-state solution, but then do absolutely nothing to actually push for that. We don't use any leverage whatsoever to make Israel stop the expansion of the illegal settlements into the West Bank. We're not stopping them in their current genocide in Gaza. And so we are fully complicit in the ongoing ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people, as well as the apartheid that he mentioned there. Now, one other thing that he mentioned in this clip was about a child with no head. Now, I mean, keep in mind, guys, that was one of the biggest claims coming out of October 7th from the Israeli government and defenders of their brutal response inside of Gaza, is that Hamas beheaded babies. Now, that was completely disproven, right? Remember the 40 beheaded babies claim, right? Babies were put in the oven. That was completely disproven. It was a total lie. There were no beheaded babies on October 7th. That doesn't mean that there weren't war crimes that were committed. There were, but there were no beheaded babies. But that was a sick, disgusting lie that was created to justify what Israel has been doing inside of Gaza. And part of what they just did recently with their strike on the Rafah tent camp, where they killed Palestinians who were trying to take refuge in a place that Israel told them to go as a safe zone, part of what they did as part of these bombing campaigns is they decapitated children. That's a fact. How do I know it? Because I've seen the fucking videos. That's how we know it, right? I wouldn't recommend anybody goes and looks it up, but if you don't believe me, you can. And, you're going to see some of the most horrific shit that you've ever seen in your life. I mean, this is what, has been going on for the last 6 or 7 months. Like, do people not understand that when a 2,000-pound bomb drops on a refugee camp, as Israel has done, like in Jabalia, for example, does it not matter, or does it actually matter whether or not a decapitation happens by a sword versus a 2,000-pound bomb? Like, what's the difference if a child's head is coming off of their body? Again, this was used as a sick lie to justify Israel's response inside of Gaza. And it was a lie. But the point of that lie was to say, look at how barbaric Hamas is, that they would behead a child. How many beheaded children have there been inside of Gaza over the last 7 months? How many beheaded children? And yet there's no outcry for that. At least not here in the United States. Clearly there is in Ireland, right? And, I say it's amazing to me that this kind of rhetoric is coming out of a European country, but because it's Ireland, it's not as surprising, right? I would be surprised if I saw this kind of a rhetoric coming out of Germany, maybe, or the United Kingdom, but not Ireland. And the reason that I say that is the Irish people and the Palestinian people have a lot deeper historical ties than people may think, right? Obviously, the Irish people have gone through a tremendous amount of oppression and occupation by the British. But just a historical fact here to tie these two things together, right? And I actually learned this more recently for myself. The guy who, the British Lord Balfour, right? The guy who issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which was basically the British Empire's play to recognize Zionism as a legitimate state-building project, right? They were saying, which at the time, the Jewish population that was increasing in Palestine made up about 6% of the population. Non-Jews made up about 94% of the population at that time. And the British Empire stepped in and they said, we are going to recognize the right for this 6% of people to eventually establish a state in Palestine, right? And part of that was obviously inherently going to be a displacement of the Palestinians who were living there at the time. And the same guy, Lord Balfour, who issued that declaration, okay, affirming the Zionist project and the expulsion of Palestinians, that same guy has a nickname in Ireland. His nickname is Bloody Balfour, because he also was directly complicit in the oppression of Irish people back in, I believe it was the late 1800s. So the overlap, the connection between the Irish people and the Palestinian people is very close. And so it really shouldn't be surprising that you have Irish politicians who feel this passionately and this deeply about this kind of an issue. Now, we move on, because I have some other updates that I just want to mention here with you guys. On the, the chaos, the nonsense surrounding this recent ceasefire proposal, right? So a couple days ago, Biden comes out. He says, I have a big announcement. Israel has put forward a ceasefire proposal, right? So Israel's fully, they fully buy into this. It's now on Hamas to potentially get an end to the war, right? And he lays out this 3-phase plan. It's extremely similar, if not almost one-to-one, with the plan that Hamas agreed to, a few months ago, back in like February, and then again a few weeks ago. So the plan that Joe Biden released, right? I showed you guys the graphic outlining the 3 phases. That was very close to the deal that Hamas agreed to a while ago. And so my question was then, okay, well, what the hell has changed in this time? Because at that time, the United States and Israel were rejecting basically the same deal and saying that it was a totally absurd and ridiculous deal. So what changed in the meantime? And at least from my perspective, trying to make sense of what's been happening over the last couple of days and reading into the various Israeli response, is it really looks like nothing has changed, right? The main sticking point to get a ceasefire proposal, to make it as simple as possible, is Hamas wants an end to the war, a permanent end to what's happening in Gaza right now. Israel, Netanyahu, do not. They do not want a hostage deal. They do not want any sort of deal that would end this ongoing genocide. So that's been the main sticking point. Israel basically wants to have it both ways. they want to get a temporary pause, maybe, to get the hostages released back to Israel, and then to just continue with the genocide right after that. And it looks like that's still basically exactly where they are. So, I mean, we even have CNN here reporting that Netanyahu has spent the last few days undermining the ceasefire proposal to preserve his power. And so you hear stuff like this, and it's like, well, which one is it? You just said, Joe Biden, that this was an Israeli proposal. So I guess what he was saying was it was a proposal that the Israeli War Cabinet maybe agreed to, or 2 out of the 3 maybe agreed to, but Benjamin Netanyahu didn't agree to it. So how exactly is this something that Israel agrees to if the prime minister of Israel, right, the main guy you have to convince to get on board with this kind of a thing, if he doesn't agree with it, then you don't have an Israeli deal, right? It's certainly not their deal if the prime minister doesn't agree with it. And again, his main sticking point is he wants the complete eradication of Hamas, which is going to play into a couple of the clips we're going to watch here in a second, which is like, if part of this deal with Hamas is that Hamas is no longer going to be in power, or that Israel will, basically be able to, after phase 1, then go back and say, oh, the negotiations fell apart, let's continue with the genocide, and push forward with the eradication of Hamas, then why would Hamas agree to that deal, right? That doesn't really make any sense. Let's cut a deal that involves your total eradication. Not exactly something that I think Hamas is going to be, finding reasonable, but we also have statements like this here from President Biden basically admitting what this CNN report was saying. So they say U.S. President Biden says that people have every reason to draw the conclusion that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own political purposes. So again, like, this is why none of this makes any fucking sense. How is this an Israeli proposal, but also at the same time Benjamin Netanyahu has every reason to continue to prolong the war and he doesn't actually want a ceasefire? It seems like those are just a little bit contradictory, right? And then we also have statements like this. So this is from a recent Time magazine interview that Joe Biden did. And I'm going to have to go and read the entire interview because apparently there was some interesting stuff in it. But this was one of the questions, right? Whose fault is it that the deal, the ceasefire for hostages, has not been consummated? Is it Hamas or Israel or both? And Biden says Hamas. Hamas could end this tomorrow. Hamas could say, blah, 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 blah. We don't know what the fuck he said there. And done, period. So I really, I mean, it says unintelligible down here, but like, what did he say there? What is the thing that Hamas could say that would actually get a ceasefire put in place? Because at least to me, it looks like if Hamas agreed to the ceasefire that Biden posted on Twitter a couple of days ago, then that would not be an agreement that Israel would follow through on because they want the total eradication of Hamas. I did not see the total eradication of Hamas in that deal that Biden was just floating. So, I mean, again, it's all over the place, guys. Now, we also have questions like this here from Asal Rod posting this back and forth with State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller. Let's go ahead and watch a little bit of this here. I'll speed it up just a bit.
Remarks, which included the idea that as long as Hamas lives up to its commitment, there could be, and I quote, the cessation of hostilities permanently. And you say that is an Israeli proposal. So the government of the State of Israel is signed up to a proposal that there could be a permanent end to hostilities and Hamas still in existence in a meaningful way?
No. They're signed up to an agreement that leads to a permanent cessation of hostilities, but with a number of provisions that have to be negotiated to get there at the end of the phase.
But if the provisions...
But I say, I'm not going to negotiate all those provisions in public. I talked about this a good deal yesterday, about the fact that one of the principles the secretary outlined in Tokyo in November is that there cannot be continued rule of Hamas in Gaza after October 7th. I'm sorry, after the end of this conflict, and that's what we're committed to.
No, but I understand that. But if the provisions required would be the dissolution of Hamas, why would Hamas sign up to get that ball rolling?
Because they don't want to see continued conflict, continued Palestinian people dying. They don't want to see war in Gaza. They want to see reconstruction of Gaza. Now, look, I will grant you one thing. I said this to Matt yesterday. It may be that Sinwar decides that he is safe in the tunnel and his interests have diverged from the people of Gaza. And so he's not willing to agree to a ceasefire. And he's not willing to look at this proposal and say it requires good faith negotiations to get from phase 1 to phase 2. So I'm not going to accept it because I'm safe and I don't have any interest in the Palestinian people who continue to suffer the ravages of war. But I will say, if you look at the deal that's on the table, it is manifestly in the interest of the Palestinian people, it's manifestly in the interest of the Israeli people, it's manifestly in the interest of the world. And so that's why we'll continue to push for it. And if Hamas really does represent the interests of the Palestinian people, as they say over and over, it's without a doubt that they'll take this deal.
Okay. So, like, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? You're telling me that the entirety of this proposal that you're putting forward rests on the idea that Hamas truly wants what's in the best interest of the Palestinian people. Now, let me make my position clear on this. I don't really care one way or another if Hamas remains in power. I want an end to the genocide, right? However we can possibly facilitate that. The way that I think you actually remove Hamas from power, it's not going to be through military means as Israel wants to prosecute it. It's going to be with a political solution that requires the end of the apartheid, the end of the occupation. Without the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian people, Hamas would not exist as it does today, period. Okay, so that's my view on Hamas and the potential solution that I would go with. But for this guy, for Matthew Miller, a Biden administration State Department spokesman, to say that basically this entire deal hinges on the idea that Hamas wants what's in the best interest for the Palestinian people, so they will be willing to give up their own power in order to end this current genocide. For you to say that, bro, what have you been saying for the last 8 months straight? You've been saying the exact opposite of that. In other words, you don't believe that that's what Hamas wants. You do not believe that Hamas wants what's in the best interest of the Palestinian people. So how are you hinging an entire ceasefire proposal on that if you don't even believe that that's what Hamas stands for? See, this is what I mean when I say it. None of this makes any sense, right? I mean, he just contradicted the consistent rhetoric from the Biden administration over the last 8 months straight. How do you think that Hamas is going to agree with that if you do not believe that they want what's in the best interest of the Palestinian people? You're constantly talking about how they love when Palestinian civilians get killed because that helps their cause, right? That makes their approval rating tick up or whatever, right? That helps them to recruit when Palestinians are terrorized. I mean, effectively, what he's saying here is unless Hamas agrees to completely absolve power inside of Gaza, then the genocide continues. That's effectively what he's saying here. And again, that doesn't seem like something that Hamas is going to agree to. Now, we also have, on a different front here, but similar, another back and forth here with Matthew Miller and a journalist who asked about the possibility of Israel committing war crimes in Gaza because, that's so up in the air, right? We can't possibly figure out whether or not any of the hospital bombings or the refugee camp bombings or the attacks on aid workers in broad daylight, we can't figure out if any of these are war crimes. He basically concedes that it's a possibility that war crimes have been committed, but then says there's not going to be any change in U.S. policy. So let's watch this clip.
So you're just saying that we don't know if Israeli forces have committed war crimes in Gaza or not. You said we don't know.
I would go a bit further and say that we said we don't know the definitive answer to it, but the NSM-20 report said it's reasonable to conclude that they may have, given the sheer number of incidents, but we need to finish these processes to have definitive answers to the question.
So despite these assessments, you think there is no change in the U.S. policy to continue providing arms to Israel?
There is no change in our policy. As you know, we paused one shipment. We have not, but...
Okay, so no change in policy. So effectively what he just admitted there is that, yeah, it's likely that Israel has committed war crimes, and they've committed those war crimes with our weapons that we've been sending them in complete violation of not only international law, but also domestic law under things like the Leahy Act, which explicitly outlines that it is illegal for the United States to send weapons to a country that is credibly accused of gross violations of human rights. So you're admitting that that label of violating human rights law applies to Israel in all likelihood, but you're not going to change policy on that, right? So this is just an admission that you're violating U.S. law. I mean, it's very obvious. I mean, we just got another resignation coming out of the Biden administration where basically they admitted that the reports that they were putting out on whether or not Israel was blocking the aid from getting into Gaza, which would also fall under the purview of some of U.S. law that would make the weapon shipments illegal. And this whistleblower came out and said, yeah, that report was entirely bullshit. It was falsified. They went against the advice of the actual experts when it came to that issue. And none of this is even up in the air. I mean, again, like, how difficult is it to pick one of the dozens, if not hundreds, of war crimes that have been committed and to make an affirmative stance on one of those? How difficult is it to figure out that Israel has been blocking aid from getting into Gaza? I mean, why else did you guys build this bullshit virtue signal collapsing, sinking into the ocean pier if it wasn't to get around the Israeli blockade of aid from Gaza? I mean, all of this is just, it's utter nonsense. It's utter nonsense, right? Now, we move on because we also have some additional horrifying reports. This one from Euromed Human Rights Monitor. 42 forms of torture and inhumane treatment and degrading treatment practiced against Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons and detentions. And keep in mind, I covered that story a couple weeks ago now of basically this giant, what looks to be a concentration camp in the Negev desert in southern Israel, where they've been mass rounding up Gaza civilians and taking them to this place. And, people have had to have limbs removed because of the positions that they're being put in and because of the handcuffs that they have on them, et cetera, et cetera. Gross, allegations of torture that are going on at places like that. And so this is apparently what's going on, right? I mean, I'll just read off some of the examples here that they list. Electric shocks, pouring hot liquids on their faces, denial of medical care, producing severe scars on the bodies, refusal to let them shower, sleep deprivation, throwing stun grenades at them, brutal beatings and shattering teeth and bones, sexual violence by touching private parts, blindfolding them for extended periods of time, keeping hands and feet tied for prolonged periods of time, which again has led to some amputations. Holding naked detainees together. This is what we're supporting, guys. This is the country we're sending weapons to. 42 different forms of torture. Like, you know how sadistic you gotta be to even think of, to even theorize about 42 different forms of torture, let alone to actually do that in practice against detainees that we've gotten previous reports are usually, a bulk of them at least, civilians. So this is the kind of shit that they've been doing recently. Now, we also have Republicans being equally as insane on this issue as Joe Biden. Here we have Republican Representative Elise Stefanik saying the ICC, the International Criminal Court, which is coming down with possible arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, she says the ICC must immediately be sanctioned. That's why today House Republicans will bring Chip Roy's bill, the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, what a name, to the House floor to ensure needed guardrails to protect Israel and our allies from baseless, undemocratic attacks by the court. So, I agree that we need guardrails. We need guardrails like international law, right? These people are saying we need guardrails to protect us from international law. That's what they're saying here. So Republicans doing Republican things. And I'll finish off with this. We have Trump here from Haaretz, desperate for Miriam Adelson's cash. Her condition, West Bank annexation. So if you guys remember, Sheldon Adelson, who's now dead since 2021, rest in piss, he was a major Trump donor, and he effectively bought off Trump's Israel policy. I think this is part of the reason why Trump ended up, moving the embassy to Jerusalem and to push forward with the Abraham Accords that totally fucked over the Palestinians and allowed Israel to basically do whatever they want. It was, I think, largely because he had that connection to Sheldon Adelson and was getting millions and millions of dollars from him. And then now he wants to go to his wife, Miriam Adelson, and she's basically saying, okay, maybe I'll give you the support that you want, but you need to allow Israel to annex the entire West Bank. This is something that clearly Benjamin Netanyahu wants. Guys like Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich, members of Netanyahu's coalition, clearly they want that as well. They've been doing that, thousands of new settlements that have been cropping up over the last number of months, using sort of the genocide in Gaza as a cover for those expansions of illegal settlements. And she's saying just the entire West Bank should be annexed. To be fair, the West Bank is effectively kind of annexed right now and has been for years. It's been under, essentially military rule by Israel for decades and decades at this point. So, effectively what we have in Israel right now is already a one state. It's just a one apartheid state. That's effectively what we have in place right now, where millions of Palestinians are, again, held under martial law kind of conditions with extremely limited self-rule via the Palestinian Authority that many Palestinians feel is sort of, acting on behalf of or at the behest of the Israeli government to a large extent. So, there you go, guys. Hate to end it off with, a bit of depressing updates here, but, we have Republicans wanting to sanction the ICC along with many Democrats. We have Trump possibly getting bribed by Miriam Adelson to allow Israel to annex the entirety of the West Bank. We have continued mass confusion about what this current ceasefire proposal is, if it has any remote chance whatsoever at being implemented. And honestly, I think if I had to guess right now, and I do hope that there is a ceasefire. I hope that some deal is worked out to end this slaughter. But what I really think is going to happen is I think Hamas is going to reject the deal because they're going to say, well, first off, this isn't the deal that Biden was floating the other day that we said we found favorable. Nowhere in this deal does it outline that we're going to be eradicated. So I don't think they're going to accept the deal as Israel has been talking about it, and as the Biden administration spokespeople have been talking about it. And then they're going to turn around and they're going to say, look, we had a perfectly reasonable ceasefire proposal and Hamas accepted it, so I guess we have no choice but to continue with the genocide. That's what I think is going to end up happening over the next couple of days, maybe couple of weeks, and the nightmare will unfortunately continue.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying